Hi Booktube, and welcome to my channel. My name is Nathan, and this is the Rambling Reviewer, so called because I tend to ramble a lot. And welcome also to the second week of New Worlds November, which, if someone is here who somehow doesn't know, New Worlds November is a Booktube event hosted by the Bookish Bryans, and a bunch of other co-hosts, of which I am one. Uh, the goal is to read short-form science fiction. That is science fiction that is less than 250 pages, so short stories, novellas, novelettes, what have you. And I thought I would go over, very briefly, my wrap-up, what I read in the first week of New Worlds November. This last week, we read stories that were terrestrial based. That is, stories that are set on Earth, as opposed to anywhere else. Other planets or asteroids, space stations, the deeps of space, whatever. Um, my goal in this each week is to read at least a story a day. I did accomplish that goal. I wanted to read more. I was busy, so I didn't get as much reading as I could have done. So I'm going to try to push myself even harder next week. There was stuff that I had in my TBR that I didn't get to. There was also stuff that was not in my TBR that I ended up reading anyways. That I either updated my TBR or that never really were on my TBR, but I still read them. So yeah, I think I'm just going to go into them in chronological order in terms of what I read. So the first thing I read was not something I mentioned on my TBR, but was something that I've already done a video of. I read Monster by Gerald Klein. This is a French writer, and Greg over at Another Bibliophile Reads alerted me to the story through the Voxer. He did a video of this along with the story, along with actually I think all of the stories that he had read for this week. He did a wrap-up, in his wrap-up video, he talked about it. And I will link that below. I already talked about Monster, one of my first videos for New Worlds November. It was a really good story. It follows a woman in a lone home who is encountering there's a alien that has landed in the park. So it's the first contact story, and her husband is on the way home, and suddenly the alien starts speaking through the television in her husband's voice. So it's a story about paranoia, about worrying about your loved ones, and also about it questions whether the monster is the monster or whether it is the people. The ending especially questions that heavily. It's a really good story. I highly recommend reading it, and you can find it in this big book of science fiction edited by Jeff and Anne Vandermeer, which you will see a lot in this channel. The second story I read, I also did talk about in the same video as Monster. I read out of this Science Fiction Hall of Fame volume. It's volume 2A. This is the volume on novellas. I read Baby is Free by Theodore Sturgeon, which is a story about a young man who is talking to a psychiatrist about the weird circumstances in his life. And I will leave it there. My other video was spoiler dense. This video I will be spoiler free for everything I talk about. If I want to talk more about them, I will upload a video about it. But I really, really enjoyed Baby is Free. I really want to read the remainder of Theodore Sturgeon's More Than Human volume, of which Baby is Free is part of the novel. There's actually a discussion going on the Voxer group about fix-up novels, how writers, particularly science fiction writers, will take shorter works and then add stuff to them to make them longer works. And I know Baby is Free, this happens to Baby is Free in being made into the novel More Than Human, which I don't have right here, although do I have behind me? I don't. I probably should have grabbed it. But I only grabbed books that I've actually read this week, so I didn't think about that. But I do highly recommend it, and the story had a good, I guess, forward momentum, at least for me. The next story I read, same day as I read, Theodore Sturgeon's More Baby is Free and Monster, was a story out of this lovely anthology, the Analog Anthology #1. This was published in 1981. I found this at the library for $5, a library book sale. This goes over 50 years of analog sci-fi stories and science fact articles. Analog was a magazine that put out these science fiction stories and science fact articles. And out of this, I read Twilight by Don A. Stewart. That is John W. Campbell. And I quite like this story. It is a very poetic story that follows it's a recount of a story that the narrator hears from a hitchhiker that he in turn hears from a time-traveling man from the 3000, sometime in the 3000s, I believe, who goes forward in time to I don't even remember. It's like tens of thousands of years in the future. It might even be more than that. And he recounts how humans in this world have, or in this future, have kind of lost their curiosity and their desire to do anything, their drive, because they have machines to do all of it for them. Very pessimistic view of humanity, but beautifully written, and with a interesting, I guess, interest in music. Music is how the hitchhiking time traveler proves to the man who is telling the story to the narrator that he is a time traveler. I don't really know how that is, but something in the beautiful lyrics proves to that man that this man could not possibly be from this time. But I really enjoyed this story, and I'm really looking forward to reading more of this analog. This is obviously far before my time analogs were, although actually analogs are still going on, but the classic analogs are far before my time. So that's part of why I like them. It's interesting to see into the past, even just like the little ads and the science fact articles. that are almost certainly outdated, of course. At least in some cases. The next thing I read was my one novel. I want to read at least one science fiction novel each month. And something that's straddling the 250 line. In one case, I know I'm wanting to read a Clifford D. Simek story that is actually 252 or 54 pages. So I will be cheating on that one. But this one is only 240 pages, so it works. This is a reread for me. I read it along with Becky from the Bookclectic and Shawn D. Standfast from Shawn D. Standfast. And I loved this book when I first read it. I do think, and Shawn agreed, that Shawn brought up a lot of these points, that there are a lot of things the author misses. Particularly, he seems to oversimplify societal matters. I keep looking at this and thinking it's a smudge on my shirt, but it's just, yeah. But societal matters, like the fact that due to reasons in the story, the humanity loses much of its religion. I won't go into... Well, the main reason is because aliens arrive. This is not a spoiler because it happened in the first chapter. I don't want to go too deep into the aliens themselves, because that is a spoiler. But, yeah, humanity loses a lot of its religious ideals and its creativity, even scientific interest. And while I admire the ideas and the kind of I think the philosophy he's going for is interesting, the details are sketchy. It says that religion completely collapses because they're basically proven to be false. But one should know just by looking into religious discourse or political discourse that people don't need facts to believe stuff. Although this is also pre-fake news, so you know that in the modern day, if people were confronted with a video screen, in this case it shows that, Jesus Christ was crucified, but then he never got out of the cave where he was buried, they would say that that was faked. They would say that that was, this is even before, the moon landing, so the entire conspiracy was that. But they would say it was just, made on a Hollywood set. There's a lot of little details like that it, doesn't do well, where, if you think a little too hard about it. The story does have a good, momentum, though, and there are some extremely beautiful parts, and there are also some, incredibly, terrifying and suspenseful parts, and the ending is absolutely amazing. I do highly recommend this book, and I'm looking forward to reading more Arthur C. Clarke in the future. I've read some of his short stories. I know, it's been talked about with Gareth over at Book Songs and Other Magic, along with Scott, the Bookclectic, about reading Rendezvous with Rama, which I have back here in this beautiful psychedelic cover, and right here in this old Del Rey classic. I couldn't remember if this is Del Rey or... I actually was thinking of Phantom, or Valentine, and I was wrong on both counts. It was Del Rey. Okay, I'm about to get used to the covers and the particular designs of the different major mass market paperback companies from like the 60s and before. Uh, from classic science fiction in general, just so that I don't make a fool of myself. um, After that, I read two stories out of this volume. This is Arrival, but the original edition was named Stories of Your Life and Others. This is Ted Chiang. I read Story of Your Life last year. Um, actually, Story of Your Life? Yeah, Story of Your Life. But yeah, I read this story last year. Um, and quite enjoyed it. There are other stories that I've read by Ted Chiang that I like more, including one of the stories in here. I read two stories. I read The Evolution of Human Science, which is good. It's actually a really, really interesting piece of fiction. It's not a story, though. It's like a few pages long and looks into a world where um, there are two kinds of people, normal humans and metahumans, and the metahumans can use their increased brain power to automatically send information to each other neurally. It's called DNT, digital neural transmit. Um, and it is extremely interesting because they, through this technology and through this gene therapy, which how the metahumans come about, they far outpace human science, and so humans are just left behind to essentially try to figure out how the metahumans are doing what they're doing, like they're reverse engineering technology or looking into the texts that the scientific articles that they write, which they don't even understand because they can't follow the language. But it's very interesting though. The other story is Tower of Babylon, which I honestly wonder if it would be considered science fiction at all. I think it reads like science fiction, and I think it is science fiction, but with a big caveat. This is a story that is set in uh, biblical era Mesopotamia. Uh, there is an actual Tower of Babylon. This is not a metaphorical title. And it follows a group of miners who are ascending the Tower of Babylon, which is so tall that it takes like 40 days to ascend it. And there are people living on the tower who never grew down. And it takes a biblically literalist view of a lot of what is talked about in Genesis, such as the vault of heaven, the firmament that covers the earth like a dome. Um, and these men are going to go up there and they're going to mine into the vault of heaven. Well, I should say it mostly takes a biblically literal view of mostly a biblically literal view. There actually is the ending is a bit of a surprise. But it begs the question, is this science fiction or is this fantasy? Or is it just generally speculative fiction? I lean toward the being science fiction myself. My main reason being that it kinda builds up the world in the same way that a science fiction story does. Just from the it's almost as if it's science fiction for a world that's not our own. So, like, what if you had science fiction that was written in 2000 BC? Uh, would that be science fiction? And of course, it's not written in 2000 BC, so it might be begging the question, but I think it's an interesting question to beg nonetheless. Now, that being said, the story is incredibly good. It has again, I think it has a really good forward momentum. And again, some beautiful, beautiful parts in the story. And the ideas are absolutely fascinating. The sheer scope of the Tower of Babylon in the story is awe-inspiring. Um, and I really, really enjoyed it. Now, the last story I read out of this volume, which actually I think I read. I can't remember if I read this one. I think I read this one before the Ted Chiang stories, actually. But it has this volume of Cordwainer Smith, The Best of Cordwainer Smith by Ballantine Books. And Cordwainer Smith is an author that I started reading last year, right before New World's November, and that I've enjoyed immensely. Under Old Earth follows a Lord of Human Instrumentality, which is essentially the lords and ladies of human instrumentality are the dictatorship that runs the disparate planets of humanity, and their goal is to keep people happy. And part of the way they do that is through slavery, because they enslave these entities called underpeople, who are basically people who have the minds of animals, I believe. And there are Habermans, who are like, I think they're condemned criminals who are forced into being essentially slave labor on board spaceships that travel. I'm not gonna leave that one off because I don't really remember the Haberman aspect too much. It was a while back since I read this. And the AI and the robots who are also used as servants. Now I've read several stories out of this volume so far. But again, it follows I lost track where I was at. Sorry. It follows a Lord of Human Instrumentality, which is this dictatorship, and he has been alive for a thousand years or so. And he is going with his two robots who are. Their minds were constructed after the deaths of two former lords of human instrumentality, and then put into the robot bodies that look like Roman legionnaires. And they are going down into the Gehelt, which is the inner parts of the planet Earth, where there are no laws. And the reason why his name is Sto Odin, which is Russian for 101, according to the foreword for the story. And they are going down there to check to find out if people are really happy. Happy in the system where they are pumped full of drugs to keep them happy when they don't have to work or do anything because there are slaves to do all the work for them. Non-human entities, essentially, or in the case of Haberman, humans who aren't important, but they don't have to. The normal people don't have to. And that's about the extent I can say of the story, both because I need more be spoilers, and second because I don't really understand what happened in the story. I feel kind of stupid, but this was a very, very weird story. Um, there were, again, some absolutely beautiful, beautiful parts. I actually want to read a small bit out of this story. This is while Stowe Odin and his two robot pals are going into the planet's core, and Stowe Odin is kind of um, talking about life and death. Uh, and he has just kind of come out of a trance. Uh, you are taking me to a wild place, a free place, an evil place, perhaps. They are dying there too, as all men die, as I shall die, so soon, so brightly and simply. I should have died a long time ago. I was the people who knew me. I was the brothers and comrades who trusted me. I was the woman who comforted me. I was the children whom I loved so bitterly and so sweetly many ages ago. Now they are gone. Time touched them, and they were not. I can see everyone that I ever knew racing through these corridors. See them young as toddlers. See them proud and wise and full with business and maturity. See them old and controlled. See them old and contorted as time reached out for them and they passed hastily away. Why did they do it? How can I live on when I am dead? Will I know that I once lived? I know that some of my friends have cheated and lie in the icy sleep, hoping for something which they do not know. I've had life and I know it. What is life? A bit of play, a bit of learning, some words well chosen, some love, a trace of pain, more work, memories, and then dirt rushing up to meet sunlight. That's all we're made of. We who have conquered the stars. Where are my friends? Where is my me that I once was so sure of? When the people who knew me were time swept like storm-driven rags towards darkness and oblivion. You tell me, you ought to know. You are machines and you are given the minds of men. You ought to know what we amount to, from the outside in. We were built, said Livius, by men, and we have whatever men put into us. Nothing more. How can we answer talk like yours? It is rejected by our minds. Good though our minds may be. We have no grief. We have no fear. No fury. We know the names of these feelings, but not the feelings themselves. We hear your words, but we do not know what you are talking about. Are you trying to tell us what life feels like? If so, we already know. Not much, nothing special. Birds have lives too, and so do fishes. It is you people who can talk, and who can knot life into spasms and puzzles. You must things up. Streaming never made the truth truthful, at least not to us. So, that's just a little excerpt from Under Old Earth by Cordelia Smith. I will be reading the remainder of his works out of this volume, that are in this volume, that is, in this week, so I'm looking forward to that. And those stories that I will be reading will be Mother Hittens, Little Kittens, Alpha Ralpha Boulevard, the Ballad of Lost Camel, and a planet named Sheol. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So I have gone on long enough. This is my wrap-up, so I hope this was somewhat enjoyable. And I look forward to hearing what you all read. In fact, I'm going to be spending now a bit of time catching up on my co-hosts and seeing what they've been reading. Alright, bye everybody.